I just bought this orchid to replace one that didn't make it. You know, I have bad habits of either forgetting to water my plants or I drown them in water. Even though my intentions are to help this beautiful plant flourish, sometimes I just don't give it all the care and support it needs. And that happens with humans too. We all require attention and nurturing to thrive. And when our needs aren't met, for whatever reasons, there's an impact on our mindsets and our emotions. You see, there's a connection between how we think and what we feel. Our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions impact our behavior, and our behavior impacts the overall quality of our lives. For those of us who've had one or more abortions and struggle with the impact it's had on our lives, we often find ourselves wondering, how did I get here? In this video, Karin Barbito, author and special projects director for Support After Abortion, is joining me to unpack some of the root causes of why some women find themselves on the difficult path leading to abortion. If that's you or someone close to you, you're in the right place. So we're diving into your just terrific book, Unraveled Roots, Exposing the Hidden Causes of Damaging Behavior. And we're talking about specifically how it connects to choices we make that lead to an unplanned pregnancy and or abortion. And could you give us a summary again? There were some 4 specific roots, I think, that you talked about. So can you just give us a quick refresher?
Yeah, I would love to. We're calling these things roots. They're actually facts that happen in our lives when we're children. And because we're children, we're pretty self-centered and we make everything be about us. And so when something happens and we believe lies about ourselves as a result, it drives us unconsciously into really unhealthy choices and behaviors. And so the 4 that we've identified in this book, and there's many more, is abandonment. And we're going to discuss that in greater detail today: addiction, abuse, and codependency.
Well, I'm anxious to dive into the abandonment because you and I talked in an earlier video, and I'll put the link up here for those who want to check that out. We both talked about how we connected with the root of abandonment. So let's go back and look at in some more detail. How do feelings of abandonment shape our mindsets and our behavior?
Yeah, such a great question. You know, when I think about being a child, I mean, we all need nurturing. We all need attention. We need to be able to be secure in our relationships with our caregivers or our parents. And when that's absent, either through a parent walking out of a marriage or a parent never walking into a marriage, or there's all different kinds of abandonment that we're going to get into deeper conversation about. But what happens is we believe that we're unloved or that we're not important, or that, some of the dialogue that I can remember going through my head is, my dad must not love me because he said this to me, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever that thing might be, it makes me think like, I'm not loved by my dad. If I'm not loved by my dad, who's going to ever love me? And then we choose really unhealthy relationships because we just crave a connection, because we didn't have that from a parent growing up. And it's so interesting how it can just set root. That's where the root comes from, sets root in who we are and what we believe about ourselves. And the rest is history.
Mm. And, you remind me, even if we end up in a good relationship, we can be so afraid to lose it. And I think that was the case of one of my abortions. I was so afraid to lose that relationship that I thought I had to have an abortion or I would lose it and be abandoned all over again. So let's make the connection with abortion in particular, or that unplanned pregnancy.
Okay. I'm just going to use an arbitrary example of what abandonment might look like, because I think many of the people that are watching today might be able to relate to it. Okay. There's a different story in the actual book, and we can talk about that as well if we have time. But let's just say I'm 5 years old and my mom and dad aren't getting along and my parents get divorced. I'm 5 years old. I don't understand what that's about, so I make it be about me. Yeah. I must have done something wrong. My dad or my mom left the marriage. If they could leave the marriage, they must not love me. If they're not going to love me, who will? And I said that earlier, but I'm just trying to make it real for you. And so, what do I believe about myself? All of those low self-esteem conversations I had with myself that I would never fit in, I would never measure up. And so, what does that make me do? That makes me, when I'm in middle school or high school, when I get paid attention by that boy for the first time, I just like latch onto that, right? Because I just want to feel a part of and be connected. And then when he lets me know what he wants from me, I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to have that sex with him because I want to keep him near me. I want to keep in that connected relationship, knowing full well that that's not what he desired. He just wanted to have his needs fulfilled. And so you have sex, even protected sex, pregnancy can happen.
Yeah.
And when that happens, and the guy either says, it's your choice, do what you want, or says, I'm going to leave if you have this baby. Again, we're not thinking about that baby. We're thinking about this connection that we have, even though it's not real, and not wanting to let that go. And so it all lines up. I mean, abortion is definitely a symptom of having a root of abandonment in our life.
Yeah, because as we've said before, none of us have a life goal to go through an unplanned or, a medically difficult pregnancy and to choose abortion.
Right.
But I've asked myself the question, but how did I get here, and why not, not my friends? And the beauty of the healing process after abortion is that we can look at our lives in a fresh way. And like you said, go back and look at what were the circumstances or the experiences we had that impacted us so early in our lives that it ended up impacting us maybe for the rest of our lives. And as I've thought about it, in my family, my had both of my parents there. It wasn't a divorce. My dad worked really hard to provide for the family, but because of his own upbringing and circumstances in his life, he wasn't good at connecting emotionally, and he was always very busy. My mom was busy taking care of my oldest sister, who was sick a lot. And my three older sisters, because I'm the youngest of four girls, were busy doing their own life. So when it came to me understanding how do you form good relationships, romantic attachments and that kind of thing, I didn't have good role models. There wasn't anybody there to explain it to me. I didn't have brothers to talk through with it. And I felt like I was really out there pretty much on my own. And even though I had an intact family, I think it's pretty fair to say that we just weren't connected. And so that's the way that I related to that feeling of abandonment. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it does.
Yeah. So when when it came time to go to college, being so shy, I was like forcing myself to be out there, and I wanted those connections with boys. And, I made the mistake, or I just didn't know any better, that, sex doesn't necessarily have anything to do with love and connection.
Right.
And so I started fooling around really early, and I just really kind of made a mess. Got pregnant once, then a second, and then a third time. Still trying to find that emotional connection, but just not able to make it happen.
I totally agree. I can share a story in my life. I felt, as I said before, I felt like I was never going to measure up. I was really good in sports, and I learned really early on that if I wasn't going to be the best, I was going to disappoint my dad. And so I learned again very early on that it was better to quit than to fail. Right. So I never felt like I was going to measure up. I never was going to be good enough. If my dad didn't think I was good enough, nobody was going to feel like I was good enough. And so when I got into high school, even though I was completely insecure, I appeared as if I was very confident. And I caught the eye of like the coolest kid in our high school.
Whoa.
He had long red hair. And so we kind of hooked up. It was the first person I had sex with when I was 16. And I knew all for the few years that we were together in high school that he was having sex with other women. But it was more important for me to appear popular because I was in a relationship with him than it was to not be, and to stand on my own convictions and how I felt I deserved to be treated, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted that connection and I didn't have it. And the only way that I learned how to be connected was by having sex with people, by putting out, right? And so it was a lonely existence. And Jane, I don't know if you experienced this, but for me and maybe some of those watching, in those quiet moments how what you're doing is not providing you what you really want.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not getting what you really want.
No.
It appears as if you are, and you can pretend in the moment that you are.
Yeah.
But it's not.
That's so true. I relate to that. And, God made us for relationship, but not just any relationship.
Right.
He made us to be mindful and thoughtful about who we paired ourselves up with for the rest of our life, and certainly to be intimate in that way.
Yeah.
And but when we're in the midst of it, especially being younger, we're not aware of what we're doing. And it occurs to me, Karin, that I want to make sure that no one's receiving this as condemnation, because we can't really look back at the past with the experience and knowledge, and the consequences that we've suffered today. But what's helpful about looking back is we can have a better understanding of what was driving us and what might still be driving us, so we make better choices for the future. Karin, I also, and you probably do too, talk to a lot of women who are in the covenant of marriage, and they have a good marriage. And then now they're pregnant, and it could be, they're overwhelmed with the children they already have, the financial burdens or pressures. And so they have the conversation with their husband. And oftentimes the response is, well, what do you want, dear? And, it's your body, you decide. And I think what I hear a lot is it triggers that abandonment feeling again. How does that connect?
Well, just the words that were said make me feel like I'm abandoned, right? Like, it's your body, it's your choice. It's talk about hands off and leaving it all to me. That makes me feel abandoned. So it's certainly going to trigger the abandonment that I felt when I was a child. And so once we're triggered by something like that, we behave in the same way that we always did, right? Fear enters the picture. We make decisions based out of fear. We now assume that he wants us not to have this baby since he's not stepping forward and saying, oh, honey, we can do this. I support you all the way. We'll get through this. What's one more to feed kind of thing, like that encouragement kind of stuff. So, I mean, it really can add to the decision-making process in a negative way.
Yeah.
Right?
And this isn't by any means a male or father of the baby bashing conversation. And one of the things I want to say is Support After Abortion is doing some wonderful work for men who've been involved in abortion. And maybe you could talk about some things that you have available. Let's get it out there now, because I don't want to leave the wrong impression.
Well, we're currently writing an Unraveled Roots book for men. We're hoping it will be ready by the end of March. If you go to our website, to the Client Healing Center, there's all kinds of content there. There's Keys to Hope and Healing, which is an abortion recovery booklet. It's very entry level. We have it for men, for women, secular, religious, English, Spanish. So, I mean, we're just trying to create options so you can get connected to the healing that you prefer. But our website is just rife with all kinds of videos, testimonies, trainings, and in that portion of our website is completely anonymous. We don't ask for a username, a password. We don't check IP addresses. We don't even know how many people come to visit that site. So you can do it completely alone at your own pace and feel secure that nobody will find out.
And that's great. I mean, couples can do this together. They might want to do it together in a group or together just as a partner, because what you're saying is it's not just women who have roots of abandonment that influence their behavior. Men do too. And we
Absolutely.
want healing for everyone who's been hurt by abortion.
Yeah, and think about that. If a man grew up without a father, what kind of abandonment root does that instill in him, right? I
Mhm.
mean, fathers are the ones that teach their boys to become men, right? And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that women, single parent households that are led by women don't do a great job, but there
Yeah.
is something missing if there's not a man, a male figure, to do some of that guidance.
Karin, I want you to talk about, if you would, at the end of the chapter on abandonment, there's an activity that I think kind of helps everybody connect the dots to their own personal circumstances and situations, which are going to be different than yours, going to be different than mine. And it really helps to connect those experiences of abandonment and abortion. So, could you walk us through some of that?
Jane, I'm really glad that you are drawing our attention to this part. And so, what I'd really like to do, especially for those of you that are going to go ahead and get your free copy of the book, I'd like to talk about Michelle's truth story. That's the abandonment story in Unraveled Roots. And Michelle described her family as the perfect family. They went on vacations together. They went to all of her sporting activities. They just thought that they had the perfect family. They lived in the suburbs, had a middle class house. It was all good until the therapist that she went to see, because her life was out of control. She was abusing drugs. She was having sex outside of marriage. She was in relationships with people that really hurt her. And so when the therapist went a little bit deeper, what we found out was that Michelle's dad abused a prescription pain relief for some injuries that he had. As a result, he did work and stayed pretty much primarily in his room. Her mom worked all the time to provide for the family. And because of the emotional disconnection between her mom and dad, she poured herself into her work and her colleagues at work, leaving the children at home to fend for themselves. And so Michelle says in her story that she felt as if, and she didn't grow up like her siblings. Like, she felt of herself like the black sheep of the family, and she thought something was wrong with her. She thought her parents didn't love her because they never gave her any attention. So we set up the facts, what really happened. The facts of the matter are that Michelle was emotionally abandoned by her parents due to their own issues of addiction and unavailability. That's what happened in her life. What she believed about herself as a result of those facts, that root, is she believed that she had the perfect family, which was not true. She believed she was not as good as her siblings, which was not true. And she believed that there was something wrong with her. Not true. And so, by becoming aware of the thinking that she has about herself and replacing it with the truth, which is Michelle's parents didn't abandon her because of lack of value. Michelle does have value. Her parents had their own issue, right? And so they didn't probably even recognize that they had abandoned her, but it did make her feel negatively about herself, which drove her conduct into sex outside of marriage, drug abuse, and unhealthy relationships. So for those of you watching, we want you to write down the fact of your life regarding abandonment. What happened in your life? How did that make you feel about yourself? What decisions did you make about yourself as a result of it? And what's the truth of who you are today? Replace
Yeah.
it with the truth.
That is so good. And I want to read something that's it's at the bottom of page 19 in this chapter, and as her life is described, it says that it's a sobering truth that a caretaker or parent can supply all the basic nutrients we need to survive. So our house, our clothes, food, and so forth, without providing a beautiful term here, the full heart involvement we need to thrive. Knowing we're loved in our heads and feeling we're loved in our hearts are two different things.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's confusing. I hear women say, and I thought it too, I know my parents loved me. It's like we feel we have to defend them. And that's understandable because they were good people. They were doing the best they could with what they had, and they were only human.
Right.
And so, again, we want to say this isn't about shifting blame to anyone. It's about, I think, seeing the more full picture.
Yeah.
And that's how we can really be on the healing journey. And the good news here is that there's terrific resources available for us. There's enough of us speaking up about the healing process after abortion that there's paths that you can follow, even though everyone will have their own path to healing. And the other part of the good news is that we're never worthless. We're created by God in his image. Whether you believe it or not, you are. And so the circumstances of how you grew up and how you were treated sometimes can be, really, really rough and really challenge that belief. But now you're stepping back, and you can look at what might have caused you to believe differently or think differently about yourself. And then move forward and get some support to, like you said, make better choices, be in better relationships. And I love the point you made at the beginning, Karin, about changing the course of history in your own family.
For those of you watching, people can be in very different places in their healing journey. And I don't think it's such a great idea to compare your healing to someone else's, because your healing is just as varied as perhaps the two of you are. And so, again, you're doing something really valuable for yourself, for your own personal growth and change. So I want you to keep it up. Watching these videos is a huge step on your healing journey. Digging into those icky, sticky places, you know what I mean. When you hear a word or a phrase or somebody sharing their testimony and you kind of wince and you think, oh my gosh, I have that in me too. It's really hard, and it takes great courage to press into those things. I'm really proud of you for staying the course. So just keep showing up, keep doing the work. It's not perfection, it's progress, and if you feel like you could benefit from talking to somebody, you can call us at Support After Abortion or get connected to a therapist or a good friend where you can talk through. It's hard to process through things like this by ourselves, right? And so if you have somebody to take that journey with you and ask you some open-ended questions that will prompt further thinking on your part, that could be really helpful. I encourage you to do that.
And that's so wise, Karin. And there is a path, and there is like light at the end of the tunnel, even if it's painful in the process. So I want to encourage you again, if you haven't had a chance to make note of Unraveled Roots, exploring the hidden causes of damaging behaviors, not just the behaviors that lead up to an abortion decision, but any or all of the damaging decisions we make, because we're human beings, and we're going to make mistakes, and life is really about growing up, and moving on. And fortunately, we've got a God who forgives us and loves us, and he's the God of many, many second chances. So thanks, Karin, for being here. I look forward to connecting with you next time. We're going to be pulling and going deeper into the roots of addiction, abuse, and codependency. So I hope you'll come back, right?
Yeah, I'll be back.
If you've made it this far, I want you to know you're doing really good work. This is healing work, and what healing after abortion looks like. Life can be painful when we look back, but that doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. In fact, with the proper support, it's part of the healing journey after trauma. When you reconstruct the path that led to your abortion, do you find any roots of abandonment? Can you trace some of your behavior back to trying to fill the voids of affection or safety in your early life? Have you uncovered any lies you've been believing about yourself because you were abused or unsafe? If you're feeling like you want to go even deeper, I put a link to the Support After Abortion website in the description below. You can download a free copy of Unraveled Roots and find more resources and groups that can help you. Now, to keep moving on the path for healing and hope after abortion, join Karin and me as we explore the roots of addiction and abuse in this video.